Welcome to my podcast, Creative Conflab, where we'll have honest conversations about creativity, art, design, and craft. Ready to get started? Let's go. Thank you for listening. This is episode 2 with Katie Hanczaryk. Thank you so much for joining me today, Katie. Just to start, I wanted to let you have the opportunity to tell people who you are, what you do, and how you got started in doing art therapy.
Okay, thank you so much. I really enjoyed your first podcast. I'm very excited for you and to be honored in this way. Thank you for taking an appreciation in this project. So my name is Katie Hanczaryk. I am currently working at the Avalon Sexual Assault Center for women and trans individuals who've been victimized by violence. And, you know, it was really through the tragedy that occurred recently in Nova Scotia that has now been identified as a domestic violence situation. I felt this immense calling to offer some sort of creative way of coping and dealing with such a range of emotions that I was feeling and that I can imagine other people were feeling too. So I'm sure we'll talk more about that. So I'm an art therapist, registered with the Canadian Art Therapy Association, which I love deeply, and formerly was registered with the American Art Therapy Association, but have found my home here, I feel like, in Canada as an art therapist. And I went to NASCAD University and studied interdisciplinary arts, and could just kind of found my way through to wanting to felt like being an artist, although it was so profoundly rewarding for me, it felt like it was missing a piece of that connection, you know, like a lot of artists are so isolated in doing their art, and there is a time and a place for me to absolutely indulge in that, but I felt there was this piece missing. So including, you know, counseling. I'm also a registered counseling therapist in Nova Scotia. So I sort of hold both of those, and that fits very well for me. That's just a little bit about
yeah, me. So you sort of started in the art discipline and then sort of found your calling of there's something here where I can help people through the art, and then sort of transitioned into that. And I love that. Yeah, I love that. And what would, for people who don't know, I've heard of art therapy, but I've never known anyone close to me who does art therapy. So how is a session different from the stereotypical talk therapy, and how accessible is it now that we're all self-isolated?
For sure. I don't know about for you, or if it's who I'm following on social media or what I'm listening to, but it seems like so many people are just really longing for creativity. And I mean, your podcast is like such a beautiful example of that. It's just like people are just hungry for it, I feel. So art therapy basically it's like talk therapy in terms of you have a therapist who is registered. It's a profession. It's, you know, you have to work with someone. Well, you don't have to, but there's a, you know, licensing board around art therapy now, which is wonderful. And people who are licensed are registered, have gone to school for that. So they're trained in how to work with people. A lot of social workers or, you know, psychologists may use art, but it looks a little bit differently than traditional art therapy. And art therapy can look a lot of different ways, just like how, you know, how talk therapy can have many different modalities. So in an art therapy session, you know, I'd gather some information from you, like some of your history, or I might offer a creative way of doing that. You know, for example, one that's just coming to my mind right now, I might ask you to, I might offer you like a bowl of black rocks and a bowl of white rocks. And I might invite you to, in a little sand tray, place black rocks that represent difficulties for you, or some hardships that you've experienced in your life, and the white rocks representing, some of the experiences that you've found were like gifts for you, and then giving you some time to kind of think about it in a different way. And then as you place them on the sand tray, then we might just talk about that. And, art therapy, there's a common misconception that, I'm going to interpret your art, which I would never do. You, as the artist, have the answers for yourself and what that means for you. So I might say, oh, I notice, I notice that your art is showing up in this way, or that this image keeps kind of returning to you. What does that mean for you? But I would never say, oh, this means that, because for everybody it's so different. I also engage my clients in a variety of different materials. So it could be like inviting them to do chalk pastels or watercolors or clay, depending on the situation and what's happening for them. Or I might just have, as one of my art therapist colleagues say, an art buffet, and you can just choose what it is that you're feeling called to work with in that moment. So sometimes art therapy can be directive, meaning I might ask you to draw a picture of your family, or it might be more open-ended, like, why don't you just draw a picture of how you're feeling today, and we can go from there, or even just a scribble, and or choosing a color or making a mark that kind of represents how you're feeling. So really it can look a lot of different ways, but it's expressing yourself. And especially I find sometimes there's difficulty in using words to explain how we're feeling. So images can be such a wonderful way to communicate and to be seen and to share how it is that we're feeling without using our words. So for artists in particular, but for anybody, it can be an amazing way of connecting to someone when it's difficult to share or even to know how it is we're feeling.
Yes, I love that. That was all so beautiful, especially as an artist myself, which I know a lot of people can relate to, is that fear of judgment, or how is other people going to perceive or interpret what I'm doing. And then when we get those fears, we just shut down and we don't create anything. Okay. And so part of my whole initiative with the podcast is to ensure people that it doesn't matter what anybody outside thinks. Just create something. And I love how you took something so minimalist as rocks to represent things. And even after doing something like that, you can move forward and do bigger things once you gain your confidence a little bit and expand. And it doesn't have to be with art supplies. It can be with anything. We automatically think of creativity and go to art, which creativity is so much more than that. Myself as a creative, I've always felt better in times of crisis or when I'm feeling down when I create something. So when I paint something, I draw something, I do collage, I do cut stuff out of magazines and paste it on a page like we used to do in kindergarten. It just makes me feel better. So what's the actual physiology or what's happening in my brain that makes me happier when that happens?
That is such a great question. That space, I'm sure you've experienced this when you're when you have the opportunity to be in this space where, a few hours go by and then you're like, oh my gosh, I haven't eaten. I haven't gone to the bathroom. I forgot everything faded away. And I was focused. And Csikszentmihalyi, who is a researcher, calls that the flow state. And my interpretation of the flow state is when parts of our brain are activated, especially, the left and right hemispheres of the brain are working together. This bilateral stimulation is what they call it. When both of those parts of our brain and our higher brain, our prefrontal cortex, responsible for decision making, what colors am I going to use? What where am I going to make this mark or this cut or this, paste? Where am I going to paste this on? You're using your rational, logical mind, which all of those parts of the brain are shut down during stress. And we're on the lower part of our brain, our survival mechanism. And so that's creates a physiological stress response in our body. And it shuts down, and it shuts down creativity. And we're thinking, where am I going to get my food? I need safety. I need security. I need to feel warm and contained. And so a lot of the time, people don't feel creative because they're stressed out and overwhelmed.
Yes.
And so,
yeah, I can definitely relate. And especially focus, decision-making, distraction so easily lately, like all of those things.
Yeah, and even the screen, screens operate as our prefrontal cortex sometimes in our logical mind. And so that can even influence how we're operating in the world and our mindfulness and how we're engaging in the world. So, art is tangible. There is an object on the page and we're interacting with that. And, of course, there's digital art too, which you're still engaging in parts of your higher brain as well. But I think basically why it feels so good, and I think it's not even just the brain. I wonder about the heart. Is the heart open when we're expressing ourselves in that way? And does it feel good? Are our ancestors supporting us in making art? Because it's a language that we've used for so many centuries. Like it sort of is the ultimate sort of transcending language in terms of, if I show somebody a picture who doesn't speak English, they may be able to resonate on a different level, and we can communicate in that way. So it's sort of like, I think about that when I'm making art and why it feels so good to be making art.
I also wanted to say that the textures and the feeling of it, feeling the paper is often soothing for me, and feeling my hand go across the paper of your drawing and like the sound of the pencil or the pen going across, like all of those different senses, I feel all get more stimulated, especially when you're in the state of flow, when you're able to shut the world out and just create. I feel that.
Yes, me too. And I wanted to say, like, when we're feeling stressed, it can be daunting to be like, okay, I'm going to sit down and paint when we're feeling stressed. So just a little tool of like, when you're in your we call it fight or flight, when you're like in survival mode, stress mode, everything feels like an attack. When we're in that mode, it could feel daunting to make that leap to like, I'm going to do a beautiful watercolor collage. Focusing on the grounding aspects of art. So it could be like exactly what you just said, feeling the paper, really looking and using all of your senses. I like to put essential oils in my watercolors and, smell them. And so it's this whole sensory experience, and that activates our higher brain. So even when you're feeling stressed and it feels like it's a big step to kind of do a creative process, exactly what you said, engage the senses as a way to kind of activate some of those parts of our brain that really encourage creativity and flow.
Right, exactly. I love that idea of essential oils in the water. I've never thought of that, and now I'm so excited to do watercolors again. Thank you for that tip. So I believe everybody has creativity in them. And because we associate creativity with art, and especially now that everybody has access to so many examples of artists, we think of, the Vincent van Goghs, the Picassos, when we think of art. So what do you tell people who are stuck in that mindset of, I'm not creative?
For sure. Yeah, such a great question. And also, just to be transparent, that happens to me too. I think it happens to all of us. It's a human experience of feeling blockages that get in the way of creativity. So I agree. I think creativity is inherent in a therapy model that I work with called internal family systems. They see it as one of the 8 C's. So creativity, compassion, clarity, calm, and others. And it's sort of like saying to yourself, "Oh, I'm not compassionate." Well, some things get in the way of you feeling compassionate towards yourself and towards others. Same thing with creativity. You are inherently creative. Blockages get in the way. And in terms of internal family systems, they would use it in terms of parts. So there's a part of me that is the I don't think I'm creative part, or I'm not worthy of making art part, or I don't have time part, or whatever these things and parts sort of come into being from, potentially traumatic or even, intense moments in our lives that maybe somebody told us that we weren't creative, or we were impacted in that way and we adapted ourselves to kind of mold into our identities. These usually happened early on. And it's really sad that I find a lot of people have these parts or these blockages, especially around art, which I find so interesting because art is subjective. Who am I to say something's beautiful or not beautiful?
Yeah.
That's like, that's just your opinion and your perception of what you're perceiving as beautiful or not beautiful. So I feel that what I would say to somebody is notice and acknowledge those parts that are getting in your way. Maybe dig a little bit deeper with the help of a therapist, or if you feel confident and grounded enough to do it on your own. Where does that come from? Can I think of a time when somebody told me that I wasn't creative?
Good enough, or it didn't look well? Yeah, you're right. You made the sky brown. Why did you make the sky brown? Right.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It's like, you're allowed to make the sky brown. You're allowed to have 3 moons in your drawing. There's a time and a place for realists and people who are oil painters and the Picassos. Yes, these are all parts of our history and our cultural identity around art. But as an individual who wants to become more creative, I would say it's a hoop. You can just jump through it. Yeah. And just take that first step, acknowledge the parts that are getting in your way, thank them for protecting you from whatever it is that they're trying to protect you from, but that you'd like, creativity, you'd like to build that creative muscle, because it is like a muscle in some ways. You wouldn't expect someone just to jump on the violin.
No.
So why would you expect someone to sit? Watercolors are a great example of that, to just, to be perfect. That's another blockage. Mm-hmm. It has to look perfect, or it has to look the way that I have it in my mind. There are some great people around that. Me too. Brene Brown and Elizabeth Gilbert, they write a lot about that.
Yeah, I am the ultimate perfectionist, and I've been working really hard on it because, especially as an artist and a designer, you're not able to share your skill sets or the work that you're capable of unless you share the work that you do. And so sharing the work that you do, and Brene Brown, I love her. She's like one of my favorites. The whole idea of being brave means you have to be vulnerable. And as artists, we're always being vulnerable because we're always sharing our work. We're always putting our creativity out there. And the nature of the world right now is everybody's a critic. Everyone has an opinion. But I like to remind myself that opinion is not fact, right? So someone else might not like it. I love it. And I'm going to keep loving it. And you can find someone else. Enjoy their art. So you've already touched on it a little bit. But for people like myself, who I'm a creative professional, so I make my income being creative and producing work. And so do you have any tips for people like me out there on how to get back to our creativity, or how to start getting over those blocks and getting out of that that fight or flight mode of we're stuck and we can't do anything?
For sure. And I just want to say my heart really, when this all happened, it was all the small businesses where I felt, that heart tug of, and doing my best to support those local businesses right now. But artists, absolutely. Right now, I'm really feeling for the artists who are, have a hard time pre-COVID finding their profession. And then post-COVID, it's extremely challenging. I think that you actually alluded to this as well, that creativity is not just art. Right. So, what brings you joy? Is it walking in nature? Now we can. So getting out in nature, activating your senses. So through sight, scenes, viewing beautiful art can be inspiring. Viewing a beautiful film can be inspiring. Listening to beautiful music, and I say beautiful, whatever brings you joy or evokes feeling, what evokes feeling in you. That could even be anger sometimes. You feel frustration, you feel anxiety. You can actually use that and put that into, channel it. And in art therapy, we call it sublimation. You're taking an experience and you're sublimating it and you're making it into something else. That process, that sort of alchemical process, is hugely transformative. So I would say, if you're not feeling it, there's a lot of different ways to go about this, but if you're not feeling it, doing something that brings you joy, and that could look like so many different things of how to kind of get out of your mind a little bit and get into that flow state. And then, like I said, sometimes you just sort of take that first step, and the first mark is always the hardest, don't you find?
Yes, the blank page is so intimidating. Right. My design instructor actually used to tell us, when you get a new blank sketchbook, take the first page and just scribble all over it. Right. And then you've got over that, I've already ruined it. So anything I create after this, that page is the worst page. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, which I thought was brilliant. So I actually discovered you through your work with the community art project Mandalas for Nova Scotia. I was on Instagram shortly after the tragic shooting happened and came across this brand new Instagram account, read what it was about, and instantly knew I had to create a piece of art for this and share it as much as possible. So can you just tell the listeners a little bit about that project and how it came together?
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing. Yes, you can find your work on my Instagram.
Yes.
Mandalas for NS. It's just incredibly beautiful and incredibly inspiring. I'm so, my cup runneth over with joy and love. And that was the intention, was, okay, we've experienced this tragedy, and I won't speak for everyone because I can't. I was feeling overwhelmed, saddened, alone, scared, and felt that, providing people with a tool that they could use to process some of their emotions. So mandalas can provide people with that opportunity, like we've been discussing, opening up your senses, you activating the left and right hemispheres of the brain, because it's like this puzzle in a circle. You sort of have to get the pieces to fit in the way that you want them to. It's this integration of different parts and pieces that come together to make a whole. And so if you think about mandalas in terms of a fractal, we're making these individual, or viewing mandalas, like you viewed the mandala project, then you made your own mandala, which provided you an experience of, whatever it was that you were experiencing, hopefully positive. And then you're sharing that with other people. Other people are then viewing your inspiring mandala. And then together there's this sort of community mandala. I'm hoping that all of these can come together. Right now that we're just on Instagram, but as it grows every single day, these incredibly beautiful, poignant, thoughtful, loving images that we can somehow find a way to display it all together as a symbol of unity and connection. And so it's on like a micro and macro level of healing and connection was my hope and my intention for this project. So it was really born out of a feeling of I have to do something, which I think a lot of people are feeling right now, with the purpose of providing someone with a tool that they can use to work with these feelings, and then to share that, and so that others might feel inspired as well. And my hope is that people who have never tried a mandala before will be brave and give it a shot and try it and see how it makes them feel. There's no pressure. It doesn't have to look a certain way. It doesn't have to make you feel a certain way. It's just providing people with an experience that invites them into a creative process.
Yes, it definitely helped me. It sort of switched my brain back into, I have control. I'm safe I'm safe in my apartment. Yes, I'm afraid. Yes, everything's uncertain right now, but I can do this small thing and be creative in this tiny project that took like an afternoon for mine. Anyway, some of them are a lot quicker, so I don't want to discourage anyone to have to take an afternoon. But it really kickstarted my creative energy again. And I felt after I created that, I kept looking back on it through the week and since then still, of when I'm stuck, to look at that and go, but that's a beautiful thing that I created at a time like when I felt my worst. And like it sort of built a little bit of resilience for myself. To be able to move forward at the pace that I'm able to move forward, because not everybody's at the same pace right now, which is another whole thing. We could probably do a whole nother episode on that. We'll save it for later. But what I also love about the project is the creativity that people are showing and different mediums that are being used. Like I saw someone arrange their salad as a mandala, and like things they found on the beach, or flowers that they found, or instead of putting a pattern, just using a circle as your canvas. So I love how people are showing up and sharing so much. And I think it's really resonating with people, and people are feeling that sense of community and inspiring each other, which I know was your goal. So I feel it happening. So I hope you feel amazing about that. Yeah.
I feel so touched and so honored, and really the guiding force also is like, I really want people to see these who know that we were so affected and wanting to share our love. So it came from a place of like, of really hope and healing. And so my hope is that, people in Colchester County and all over Nova Scotia and rural Nova Scotia where this happened can see those images too, and feel that same thing of like, we care about each other. And we care about ourselves, and we're taking the time to do that. So thank you so much for taking that time
You're welcome.
To create these images, and in all of the varieties that they take. I feel overjoyed, really. And it's, like I said, sublimating that pain into, using that as the object, and then transforming that into beauty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're not pushing away those feelings. We're saying, okay, I feel this way, and I'm gonna choose to do something about that. That is ultimately self-care. So so thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me too on this to talk about this project that means a lot to me.
Amazing. So how many have you received thus far?
Oh my goodness, there's been I think over 40.
Amazing.
And it's really exciting. And every day, like this, the people continue to email every day. I get multiple submissions and have help with this project from the Nova Scotia Art Therapy. Gabriella is also on Instagram, and she's helping me with this project, and also supported by Avalon. So our hope is to spread the word, and really wanting people who maybe haven't tried a mandala to do one. So that's also a hope that I have. But yes, just sharing this project with anybody who you feel might benefit. And I feel like that would be anyone.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. We all need a little help right now. That's for sure.
We do.
Yeah. I always like to end on a positive note. So what is one positive thing that you see as a result of this self-isolation, this whole pandemic situation, that you hope keeps happening after we're able to hug each other again, which I can't wait till that happens?
Honestly, meeting you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Would we have ever connected if we were strangers in the street, like looking down, I'm really touched by the work you're doing, and I'm hearing that you're touched by the work that I'm doing, and here we are connecting.
Yeah.
And sharing through through this, this platform that I sort of have been resisting for a long time,
the same. Yeah.
And so here we are, and we are having this incredible conversation and doing these incredible projects. And this really came out of this dark night of the soul that Nova Scotia and the world is facing.
Yeah, amazing.
I
love that.
Yeah, I think I'll say that, really, like connecting with people who and doing things and creative projects that I would have never done had it not been out of almost desperation in some ways.
Yeah, so true. Thank you so much for taking a chance and coming on my show. I also love that we're connecting. I love that we are now, we now know how to reach each other, and I will definitely be reaching out when we're able to hug again, to go for coffee, to actually hug you. That would be amazing. And so if anyone wants to connect with you, where can they find you, and what's the best contact method?
Sure. Yes, please do connect with me. You can email Mandalas for NS, so MANADALAS for the number 4 NS at gmail.com, and Instagram, same, Mandalas for NS. That's probably the best way to get in touch with me right now. This project is growing every day, and so I hope to collaborate with other organizations, perhaps the AGNS, to display these. It'll be a big sort of metaphorical art hug when we can look at all of these images all together and see them and experience them. And so that's hopefully that'll happen, hopefully. And so yes, please contribute to this growing project. It's very exciting. I hope that you find inspiration as well. And keep in touch for sure.
Yeah. So as you were saying, an art exhibition, I pictured one of those interactive art exhibitions with all of them in a circle, and you get to go in the center and see them all.
Ooh, that's a great idea. Well, yeah, I mean, geodesic domes being in a circle is healing. Thinking outside of the box of mandalas, I mean, they really exist everywhere. And that's such a cool idea. I love that.
Yeah. So let's make that happen.
Okay. Sounds good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you so much. Congratulations on your podcast.
Thank you. And that's the end of episode 2. I hope that you really enjoyed listening to the conversation between Katie and I as much as I enjoyed actually having the conversation. I know that I will be connecting with her after this is done, and I hope that you got some knowledge and inspiration out of what we discussed today. So thank you so much for listening. If you want to follow along on Instagram or Twitter, you can follow me at Creative Conflab. And the podcast is now available on all of the major platforms. So Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and a lot of people have searched apps that they use and found it that way. So try that and have a great creative day, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye.